The silent moon, the transport ship whispered hope, drifted like a broken prayer through the void, its hull scarred by plasma burns and debris impacts. Inside, Kethfer Al-Zoan pressed his scaled fingers against the observation board, watching the Lenari colony moon of Serenthil grow larger against the star field. Even from this distance, he could see the smoking craters where Varkan bombardment had torn through the peaceful settlements. "Survivor count?" he asked without turning from the viewport. 47 Linari adults recovered from the ruins. Reported his aide, Nextel. "No children found alive, sir. Intelligence suggests they were taken before the bombardment began." Kethver's throat sacs contracted a Varkan expression of disgust. As a military attach for the Dominion's strategic command, he'd witnessed countless conquests, but this felt different. Wrong. The Linari were telepathic healers, barely capable of lifting a weapon, let alone posing a threat to the mighty. Varkan fleet. What was the strategic value of this target? Kethver turned to face his aide, noting how the younger Varkan's scales had paled to an uncomfortable gray. According to Fleet Command, the Linari telepathic abilities could be weaponized. The children were taken for study. Nextal's voice cracked on the last word. Kethver nodded slowly, though something cold settled in his stomach. He'd served the Dominion for 30 cycles, fought in 7 major campaigns, and never questioned orders. But watching the gentle Linari, survivors huddled together in the transport's medical bay, their large eyes dim with grief, he felt something shift inside him. "Sir," the ship's communication officer called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from High Command. They want a full tactical assessment of the Linari capabilities before we proceed to the research stations." The research stations, where they would dissect children's minds to understand their telepathic gifts. Kethvar closed his eyes, remembering the intelligence briefings about humanity's Terran Accord. The humans had withdrawn from galactic politics after their victory in the Great War, signing binding treaties of non-interference. Most species saw it as weakness, the mighty humans choosing isolation over expansion. But Kethvar had studied human military history. He knew their capacity for both mercy and destruction. The Linari had served as combat medics during humanity's darkest battles, healing human soldiers when no one else would dare venture onto those blood-soaked fields. "Sir?" Nextel prompted. Kethver stared at the distant blue-green world of Terra, barely visible as a point of light in the neighboring system. The humans had been silent since the attack began. No diplomatic protests, no threats, no demands for negotiations. Just silence. In his decades of military service, Kethver had learned that silence from a predator was far more terrifying than any roar. "Prepare the assessment reports," he said quietly, "and monitor all long-range sensors. Something tells me we're about to learn why humanity chose peace." The gathering storm Captain Zane Holloway stood in the observation deck of the Prometheus, watching as the Terran Third Fleet assembled in the shadow of Luna Station. Ship after ship materialized from hyperspace jumps, dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyer squadrons, all maintaining perfect radio silence. The only communication was tight beam laser transmissions carrying tactical coordinates and fleet positioning data. 47 capital ships confirmed in formation, Captain, reported Lieutenant Marcus Webb from the bridge. The 5th and 7th fleets are reporting similar numbers at their staging points. Holloway nodded, his weathered face reflecting the cold light of distant stars. 23 years in the Terran Defense Force, and he'd never seen such a mobilization. Not since the Great War had humanity assembled this much firepower. The irony wasn't lost on him. They'd spent the last decade dismantling their war machine, converting weapons factories to civilian manufacturing, preaching peace to a galaxy that barely tolerated their existence. "Any word from the diplomatic corps?" he asked. "Negative, sir." Ambassador Chun's office issued a single statement. The Terran Accord remains committed to non-interference in galactic affairs. Webb paused. That was 6 hours ago, right before the fleet mobilization orders came through. Holloway almost smiled. The galaxy would interpret that statement as humanity backing down, unwilling to risk their precious peace treaty over a few telepathic aliens. They couldn't see what he saw: 3 full battle fleets moving with lethal precision toward Varkan space, their approach vectors calculated to avoid all civilian shipping lanes and neutral territories. "Captain," came a new voice from the communications station. "We're receiving a coded transmission from Terran High Command. Priority Alpha 7. Alpha 7. Holloway had only seen that classification twice in his career, both times during the final months of the Great War. "Put it through 2. My ready room. Mr. Webb, you have the bridge." In the privacy of his quarters, Holloway activated the secure terminal. Fleet Admiral Harrison Voss appeared on the screen, his expression carved from granite. Behind him, Holloway could see the bustling activity of the Strategic Command Center. "Captain Holloway, you're about to receive targeting packages for Operation Guardian's Wrath. This is a precision strike mission, no collateral damage, no civilian casualties, no mercy for those who took the children." "Admiral, what about the Accord, the non-interference treaty?" Voss's eyes hardened. "The Accord specifically states we will not interfere in galactic affairs unless our protected species are threatened. The Linari Healing Centers saved 12,000 human lives during the siege of Kepler Prime. They earned our protection with their blood and ours." The targeting data began streaming across Holloway's screened Varkan research facilities, fleet anchorages, command centers. Surgical strikes designed to cripple their military while avoiding populated areas. "No warnings?" Holloway asked. "They had their warning," Voss replied coldly. "We gave them peace. They chose to break it." The transmission ended, leaving Holloway alone with the weight of what was coming. Outside his viewport, the Terran fleet continued its silent assembly, each ship a promise kept, each weapon a vow fulfilled. The galaxy was about to remember why humanity had won the Great War. The Varkans Discovery Kether al-Zoan stood in the archive chambers of Research Station Tethmer, scrolling through classified files with growing unease. The captured Linari children were housed 3 levels below, their telepathic abilities being systematically cataloged and tested. The screams that occasionally echoed through the ventilation systems made his scales itch with an unfamiliar emotion shame. "Find anything interesting attached?" Dr. Velkoff emerged from the shadows. Between data terminals, her surgical instruments still gleaming with traces of Linari blood. The station's chief researcher took particular pleasure in her work. "I'm compiling tactical assessments on potential human response patterns," Kethver lied smoothly. In reality, he'd been digging into the classified history files, trying to understand why 37 Linari children warranted such elaborate security protocols. "Humans?" Velkoff's throat sacs pulsed with laughter. "The meat creatures signed their precious accord. They've become soft, weak. Watch." She activated a holoprojector, displaying recent intercepted transmissions. Their ambassador issued a standard diplomatic statement about non-interference. They won't risk their comfortable peace for a handful of telepathic younglings. Kethver nodded absently, but his attention remained fixed on a file labeled Kepler Prime Incident Classification Level Omega. Few records carried Omega classification. In Varkan archives. He opened it carefully. The images hit him like a physical blow. A human medical station under siege, surrounded by hostile forces from 3 different species. Terran soldiers holding impossible defensive positions, while medical staff worked frantically to save wounded personnel. And there, in grainy surveillance, footage where the Linari healers, barely adolescents themselves, venturing into active combat zones to reach fallen humans. One image showed a young Linari female, no larger than the children currently imprisoned below, cradling a human soldier whose legs had been severed by plasma fire. Her small hands glowed with telepathic energy as she held his pain at bay, whispering what appeared to be songs of comfort while human medics worked to save his life. The file contained thousands of similar images, documented over the 8-month siege. Linari healers working alongside human medical teams, sharing their telepathic gifts freely, asking nothing in return except the chance to prevent suffering. Dr. Velkoth, Kethfer called out, his voice carefully neutral. The Terran Accord, what exactly does it specify about protected species? Standard diplomatic nonsense. They promise not to interfere in galactic affairs as long as certain allied species remain unmolested. Empty threats designed to save face while they retreat into isolation. Kethfer scrolled deeper into the files, finding the actual text of the Accord. Article 7 made his blood run cold. The Terran Federation hereby renounces all claims to territorial expansion and military intervention in galactic affairs, excepting circumstances where species under formal Terran protection face existential threat or systematic persecution. The Linari were specifically named in the protected species list. New alert shined on his terminal long-range sensor data from the outer system. Kethfer opened it and felt his world tilt. Massive gravitational disturbances detected at the edge of Varkan space. Sensor signatures consistent with large-scale fleet movements, but no ships visible on conventional scans. Dr. Velkoth, he said quietly, I recommend you cease all research activities and prepare for immediate evacuation. What are you talking about? This station is protected by... The lights flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the archive chamber in hellish red light. Through the viewports, Kethva could see stars moving in impossible patterns as something vast and invisible bent space around the research station. The humans hadn't made empty threats. They'd made a promise, and now they were keeping it. When? Mercedes the Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace in perfect synchronization with 46 other Terran vessels, their emergence creating a gravity well that sent ripples across the Varkan sensor networks. Captain Holloway watched his tactical display populate with enemy positions research stations, fleet anchorages, planetary defense platforms, all exactly where intelligence had predicted. Captain, reported Lieutenant Webb, we're detecting 6 Varkan heavy cruisers moving to intercept. They're broadcasting surrender demands. Signal the fleet. Execute Protocol 7. No responses to enemy transmissions. Holloway's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Target the research stations first. Priority Alpha recover the children. Across the Varkan system, Terran warships began their work with surgical precision. The Retribution fired. Single antimatter torpedo that vaporized Research Station Kethmore's defensive arrays without touching the civilian sections. The destroyer Faithful used targeted gravity pulses to disable Station Tethmer's power grid, while Marine dropships burned toward the docking bays. No warnings. No demands for surrender. Just methodical, overwhelming force applied with the precision of a scalpel. Commander Nina Rodriguez led the boarding party that breached Research Station Tethmer's main laboratory complex. Her Marines moved through the corridors like avenging ghosts, their powered armor making no sound as they systematically disabled Varkan security forces with non-lethal neural disruptors. Command, we've located the holding cells, Rodriguez reported through her comm unit. 37 Linari children confirmed alive. They single quotes read ... They've been hurt, but they're responsive. Holloway closed his eyes for a moment, feeling something tight in his chest loosen. Medical teams are standing by for immediate transfer. How are they responding to human contact? Sir, they're singing. Rodriguez's voice carried a note of wonder. "The children are singing healing songs. Even after what was done to them, they're trying to comfort my Marines." Through the tactical display, Holloway watched as Varkan fleet elements scrambled to respond to the Terran assault. 3 destroyer squadrons burned toward the research stations at maximum acceleration, their commanders apparently believing they could still salvage the situation through superior numbers. They were wrong. The Terran ships moved like living things. Their coordination, beyond anything achieved through mere communication protocols. Gravity mines appeared in the paths of approaching Varkan vessels, forcing them into predetermined kill zones where Terran battle groups waited with patient hunger. "Captain," Webb announced, "Admiral Voss is requesting a status report. Tell the Admiral that the children are secure and extraction is proceeding." Varkan military response has been neutralized in Sector 7 through 12. We're maintaining 0 civilian casualties as ordered. The beautiful, terrible efficiency of it struck Holloway as he watched another Varkan battle cruiser die under concentrated Terran fire. This wasn't conquest or expansion. It was something far more primal. Humanity had learned to fight with cold precision during the Great War, but this was different. This was a parent protecting its young. On his personal communicator, a message arrived from Marine Sergeant Torres aboard Station Tethmer. "Sir, we found Dr. Velkoff in the main laboratory. She was torturing a child when we breached. The Linari youngster is stable now, but what should we do with the doctor?" Holloway stared at the message for a long moment, remembering his own daughter's laughter, thinking about the healing songs that had saved 12,000 human lives during the darkest days of war. "Sergeant Torres," he replied, "the Terran Accord prohibits cruel and unusual punishment of prisoners. Dr. Velkoff will be detained according to established protocols and transferred to the appropriate authorities for trial." But as he sent the message, Holloway couldn't help but notice that several Varkan research personnel had somehow managed to fall down multiple flights of stairs during the extraction process. War, it seemed, had many faces. The price of broken promises. 3 days after the Terran fleets had withdrawn as silently as they'd come, Kethvar ul-Zoan stood in what remained of the Varkan Dominion's strategic command center. Half the communication arrays lay in twisted ruins, their quantum entanglement networks severed by precisely targeted gravity pulses. 12 research stations had been reduced to lifeless hulks drifting through space. 37 Varkan fleet vessels had been destroyed or disabled, their crews either dead or imprisoned aboard Terran ships that had vanished back to human space. The casualty reports attach. General Morthek handed him a data pad with shaking claws. The old warrior's proud bearing had crumbled under the weight of absolute defeat. 8,000 military personnel lost, 0 civilian casualties. Kethvar studied the numbers with growing amazement. In 72 hours, humanity had crippled the Dominion's military infrastructure while causing no collateral damage to non-combatants. Every strike had been surgical, every target military or research-related. They'd even sent medical supplies to Varkan colonies affected by the disruption of supply lines. "Sir," came a voice from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Terran embassy. Ambassador Chun is requesting an immediate ceasefire conference." "Now they want to talk," Morthik snarled, but his heart wasn't in it. Everyone in the command center had seen the tactical recordings. The humans could have glassed every Varkan world if they'd chosen to. Instead, they'd extracted their protected species and withdrawn, leaving behind only a message: the children have been returned to their families. This matter is closed. Kethvar accessed his personal files, pulling up the intelligence data he'd been compiling throughout the crisis. The truth was there. For anyone willing to see it, humanity hadn't become weak during their years of isolation. They'd become patient. "General, I request permission to attend the ceasefire conference as military liaison. Granted. Though I can't imagine what more there is to discuss. They've made their point, rather ... emphatically. 3 hours later, Kethver found himself in the sterile conference room aboard the neutral station Harmony's Promise, facing Ambassador Chun across a polished table. The human diplomat appeared unremarkable, middle-aged, graying hair, wearing a simple business suit that suggested bureaucratic routine rather than military might. The Terran Federation regrets the necessity of recent actions, Chun began, her voice carrying no trace of triumph or anger. We hope this incident serves as clarification of our position regarding protected species. Ambassador, Kethver interrupted, I've spent the last week studying your people's history. The Great War, the siege of Kepler Prime, the formation of the Accord. I need to understand, why did humanity choose peace when you clearly possessed a power to dominate the galaxy? Chun's expression softened slightly. Because, Atachal Zoan, we learned something during the war that our enemies never understood. True strength isn't measured by what you can destroy, but by what you choose to protect. The Lainari taught us that lesson when they risked their lives to heal our wounded. But the cost your people ate up territorial expansion, resource, extraction rights, political influence. We gave up nothing that mattered, Sean replied firmly. We gained something far more valuable, the trust of species like the Lainari, who know we will stand by our word, no matter the price. Kethver leaned back in his chair, processing the implications. The other species, the ones who mocked your weakness, they're going to react to this demonstration. Yes, some will be angry. Some will be afraid. Others will finally understand that peace is not the absence of strength, but the conscious choice to use that strength only when necessary. Chun's eyes hardened. And all of them will know that there are lines they must not cross. As the conference concluded and formal ceasefire terms were established, Kethver realized he'd witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. Species that had learned to wield mercy as precisely as they wielded their weapons. When he returned to Varkan space, he carried with him a new understanding of what true power looked like. The humans hadn't conquered the Dominion because they didn't need to. They'd simply reminded the galaxy why some promises were worth keeping, no matter the cost. In the depths of space, Lainari children sang healing songs for the first time in weeks, their voices carrying across the void toward the distant blue world that had kept its word, the promise held.